Hi, my name is Lindsay, and this is my first exam, The Magical Powers of Yeast. So, yeast is a fungus. Most yeast that exists, humans can't actually digest. They can actually be killed by it. But baking yeast is one of the ones that we actually can use. It grows via the process of fermentation. So, basically, yeast is a little microorganism that breaks down carbohydrates and turns them into CO2, energy, and alcohols. That's why we use yeast when we're making beer, because obviously it produces alcohol, and that's why we use yeast while we're baking, because we need the CO2 because it acts as a leavening agent. So, why do we use yeast? Number one, the leavening agent. We need something to make sure that yeast, that our bread doesn't fall flat. If you don't use yeast, your bread ends up looking like this, as opposed to nice and fluffy and delicious. We don't want, flat bread. We also need to use it as the leavening agent. So that's what that's going to do. And it's also going to add flavor. So instead of having your bread taste like just a bunch of flour, yeast makes it taste much richer in combination with, things like salt and other things like that. So to start off, start with a bowl. Now, I don't have regular, just good old yeast laying around. So I'm going to use the active dry yeast packet. And today we're going to be using this to make my famous pretzel rolls, which I love and adore and found the recipe on Pinterest. It's wonderful. So, to start with, I heated up a quarter cup of water to approximately 105, 110 degrees. Now that is how hot this needs to be in order to wake up the yeast, because this right here is active dry yeast. So basically, this yeast is dormant. It's not completely dead, it's just dormant. So, in order to do this, all we have to do is open up this yeast packet and sprinkle it into my hot water mixture. Now what this is going to do is this is going to wake up the yeast. It's going to make sure that it knows that, hey, we're about to start using you again. You need to come out of your dormancy and actually wake up. So we're going to mix it in here. And the big thing to remember is yeast is a living organism. So if you don't have the water at the right temperature, you can actually kill it. When you're storing regular yeast, so like standard, living, breathing yeast, just regularly without the dry content, you actually have to keep it at 87 degrees. Otherwise, it's going to die. It needs to live in a warm place. Otherwise, it's just going to not do you any good whatsoever. So what this yeast is going to do as we let it sit here, and I am going to add some sugar to make sure it has something to eat, because right now we haven't added any carbohydrates to it. So basically we're waking these things up and they're really, really hungry. Now granted, we're going to add that to our bread and it's going to get something to eat there, but this is a good start. So we're going to add that in as well. So what's going to happen when this yeast is actually mixed with my giant bowl of flour here to make these pretzel rolls is it's actually going to allow the gluten to form bonds around the bubbles. That's what's going to give us our airy texture. If you slice a piece of bread, you have a ton of little bubbles, and all that is the carbon dioxide from this baby putting itself into the mixture and allowing the glucose to form around those bubbles. So yeast is very, very important. We need yeast, otherwise our bread doesn't work. So once this is all done, you have to let it sit. You have to let it work, because otherwise it's not going to absorb the sugars. It's not going to start to work properly. It will not work if, like I said, if the temperature is too high. It's going to kill off yeast, because remember, it is a living, breathing organism. We can't make it work without that. So once my yeast is completely dissolved, you'll see the water is starting to get up a little higher than a quarter of a cup, which is what I started with. Reason is the yeast is filling up that space. It's getting bigger, it's producing bubbles, and it's starting to froth and do what it's supposed to do. So basically, that is what you need yeast for. Yeast is a leavening agent. It's used to make the bread puffy and amazing, and it's used to add flavor. You can, if you smell yeast, it smells bready. It's just awesome. It's really good. So that is my first exam, and I'm gonna go make some pretzels now.